All right, good afternoon, everybody. I've got a lot of content here, so I'm going to jump right in. We're not seeing this screen updating yet, so when the team gets a chance, there we go. Great. Okay, so my name is Greg Meyers. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of ForgeFX Simulations, and welcome to Transforming Workforce Training through Spatial Computing. A little bit of brief background about myself. I've been developing software for about 30 years now. My background is in video game development and internet application development. And then about 20 years ago, we started ForgeFX Simulations with the idea of using video game technology to produce training simulators. Nowadays, that's pretty much the way everything is built, but at the time, it was a bit of a startup idea. And so ForgeFX, we founded the company 20 years ago. We are a training simulator development company. We were very early adopters of virtual reality. We saw it as something that was going to profoundly change our business, and that played out. About 90% of our simulators these days are virtual reality or augmented reality based. And so today's talk, I'm going to share a lot of the lessons and insights we've learned from a lot of the different customers we've worked for. We have the benefit of working for a lot of Fortune 500 customers who have some really intense challenges that we have to solve. So I'm going to try and share as many of those insights with you as I can today. And so again, what ForgeFX does is we develop digital replicas of all of our customers' different procedures, their processes, their different pieces of equipment, so that we can layer training on top of them. So we are really specialists at building applications that help our customers overcome the challenges they face so they don't have to get involved in software development. We are software developers and content developers. And like I mentioned, we work for a lot of different Fortune 500 companies. We've had the pleasure of working for companies across a wide array of different industry sectors. We really see ourselves as industry agnostic, and we specialize on simulators. Our background is in heavy equipment manufacturers, so we work for Komatsu, JLG, Vermeer, a lot of these companies that make large mining equipment and construction equipment. And we just recently announced that we've just been added to the John Deere supply base. And so the jobs that we're training for are jobs like this. We are training for people who are using massive multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment that can do incredible damage, both bodily and financially, to the equipment. And so these are the challenges that our customers come to. How do we train people effectively for these types of jobs? And so the solution is a training simulator. Be it a flat screen training simulator, a mixed reality training simulator, we are really just looking for the best solution for our customers. We do a lot of real world control integration as well. That's one of our company's specialties, where we're taking CAN bus controls and converting them over to USB so they're recognized by a traditional PC. Really allows us to build a very comprehensive training simulator program where users are able to get in and really understand the process and practice and make mistakes here so they don't make them in the real world. And they can go in all the way down to the control level. We simulate all the controls. They are digital replicas of every single different piece of machinery. So by the time you master our simulator, you can go out to the job site and pretty much pick up at a much faster rate. And this is what we do for all our customers, be it an aircraft de-icing simulator, a fire truck simulator, military chem bio detection simulators. We have a framework that I'll talk about in a minute that allows us to very rapidly produce content for our customers. And so the way that we do that is we are, at our root, 3D graphic specialists. We have a team of developers who've been doing this pretty much their whole life, developing content from CAD files sometimes all the way to just going out and taking photographs and measurements. We need to be able to produce highly realistic, photorealistic versions of all of our company's different pieces of equipment. It is mandatory. It's not like a game industry where you can get away with something that looks a little bit off. It is important for our customers, for their equipment, to be represented the way it looks in the real world. And then the other side of the house are mostly ex-video game programmers. So we rely heavily on video game engines, like I mentioned. Both Unity and Unreal are our two go-to tools. And like I said, at the time we started the company, it was a bit of an upstart idea. People were rolling training simulators in C++ and Java, and so we tried to find a way to do it much faster. And it's proven very effective, as I'm sure most people can attest to. And then we also rely heavily on physics. A lot of our training simulators are not just about training someone to master a piece of equipment, but how do they interact with the ground? How does the dirt physics work? How do the particle systems, fluid dynamics, those sorts of things? So it's very important for our customers that the machine interacts with the environment the way it does in the real world, so we rely heavily on physics. And then finally, the ForgeSim framework. This is our trademarked intellectual property. Basically, since we've been in business for 20 plus years, what we've done is we've developed our own intellectual property, which is a code base of simulation domain-specific components. So if you need real-world controls, learning management system integration, a tracked vehicle, all these different things that we do over and over, we've already got those components built. So if a customer comes to us, we are easily able to produce training simulators that are very comprehensive and robust in a matter of months instead of 9, 12, 18-month cycles. And this allows us to deploy cross-device. We are able to support every different piece of hardware out there. We are a content development partner and a technology partner with Meta, and so we are kind of a Meta-first approach where we always pitch our customers, let's develop for the Meta Quest, but we are also able to support traditional flat screens, tablets, and I'll get into the importance of those in a moment as well. And this also allows us to support every different platform out there. We are deploying lots of Meta Quest simulators, but they can't deploy to Brazil or to Mexico. And so it's important to us to be able to provide for our customers solutions. So great, we'll build a simulator, deploy on Meta Quest, but for these other regions, we're going to support Pico or we're going to support Apple Vision Pro or something. So it really gives us the ability to offer our customers all the needs from a one-stop shop as opposed to having some gaps. And really what we do is we are taking the benefits of XR and applying it to training. And so by delivering increased knowledge and increased immersion, what we're able to do is develop very cost-effective training programs that get rid of the travel, the fuel, the consumables, all of those elements that really make training sometimes very costly. And then we remove all the safety hazards as well. There's a statistic that 20% of the damage to equipment is done by 80% of the equipment damage done to your equipment is caused by your worst trained 20% of your employees. So if you can really focus on training your worst employees or your least performing employees, you can remove a lot of the damage to equipment or injuries or liability causes. So it's a nice way for companies to get immediate ROI. And so one of the customers that we've had the pleasure of working with for over a decade is Oshkosh. They own lots of different brands, JLG, Pierce Manufacturing, Jardan, Oshkosh Defense. And we've had the pleasure of working for both Pierce Manufacturing, building fire truck simulators, and JLG, building all sorts of access equipment simulators, aerial work platforms, telehandlers, scissor lifts, all of their equipment we've built simulation packages for. And again, these are the jobs we're talking about doing. So it is very important that these guys are incredibly well trained, because when you're up at height, this is not when you want to be, getting on-the-job training. And so the product that we developed for JLG is called Access Ready Fusion XR. This is actually a finished product. You can go to JLG's website today and purchase this directly from them. And that's how our business works. We develop content, we hand it over to our customers, it becomes their intellectual property. They can sell it, rent it, distribute it any way they want. Here's a brief video that shows this simulator in action. You're able to see that we're able to integrate real-world controls with our simulation framework. And then in this case, it's a MetaQuest headset that's allowing this user to really train for this operation as well as get muscle memory from those real-world controls. That is something that's oftentimes very important for our customers to include those real-world controls. And so the real difficulty that JLG had, the challenge they were facing was it was so hard to provide training in the real world. It was just cost effective it was cost prohibitive, and the throughput was challenging. Here you're seeing one guy getting trained, there's 3 guys standing around, 2 guys are in the bathroom, 1 guy's getting coffee, and I don't know where the other guys are, and so it was very difficult to them. So what we did was we got some cycles there, let's get rid of that. We developed a training simulator for them that removed those challenges. We really, wanted to allow them to train lots of operators all at the same time without the costs of fuel, without damaging equipment, without having to take machines out of production where they're making the money. And so we built this training simulator for them that is a networked multi-user application, so they can deploy simulators all around the world. And actually, prior to the pandemic, these were deployed around the world. And so when the pandemic hit and they were no longer able to send trainers around the world, they already had an infrastructure in place to provide training via their networked multi-user simulators. And so the real insight that we gained was that mixed reality kind of met our trainees where they lived, right? The new generation of trainee has grown up on the Xbox, on the PlayStation. They expect content that is immersive and really, compelling and gives you this sense of presence. And if you show them a video or a PDF, you are just missing the mark. So it is really important for us that we are developing content that they are used to consuming at home, and so it matches their expectation. Here's just some more information about, or a video showing more of this application. This started off as an HTC Vive application back in the day, and it has evolved all the way up through the chain of different headsets. And so we keep revving this project, making it better and better. The real insight that we gained from them was that fuel consumption, equipment wear and tear, and operational downtime were just killing training. They were just, training is necessary, but the cost of it was just so intense that it was just becoming prohibitive to give real training, and they had to limit the amount of training people got. So our system now allows people to have unlimited training with no additional cost to the customer. And so we've built training simulators for their telehandlers, for their aerial work platforms, really allowing them to deploy training anywhere around the world for any different piece of equipment, and they make dozens of different pieces of equipment. And the one thing I wanted to mention, and sometimes it goes against the grain of these conferences, but the real insight that we gained from not just this project was that VR has its space and AR has its space, but it is not the only solution. Here you're seeing, the VR simulator that really allows you to get immersed in it and have a sense of agency and presence, but sometimes that's overkill. Sometimes a PC-based simulator is all that you need, or it's much easier to transport. And so that's why we develop all of our applications to be cross-device. We do not develop anything that's just rigidly built for XR or for AR, VR. Everything runs on a computer, on a tablet, and then we are also doing some AR experimentation with them, where we are taking telematic data directly off the real-world piece of equipment via Bluetooth into the headset, so we can provide a heads-up display for a user, much like a fighter pilot would have. And then we're also experimenting with some phone-based options like that as well. So we've really done a lot of work for JLG, and they have seen incredible ROI in terms of being able to distribute training all around the world without the incurred costs. The next client that I'd like to talk about is some work that we're doing for the Department of Defense. We've had the pleasure of working for the JPO CBRND. They are the Joint Program Executive Office in charge of chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense. And the US military is always trying to modernize and always trying to advance. And so we've been working with them on a number of projects. We built UGV training simulators for their chem bio detection sensors that sit on these pieces of equipment, as well as UAV sensors that fly into hazard areas with sensors on them to detect these different hazards. We also build emulators. So a lot of these simulators, a lot of these pieces of equipment are teleoperated pieces of equipment, like a drone that you fly or an unmanned ground vehicle. And so after we do a simulator that trains them how to do the physical work, we build an emulator of, in this case it's called ATAC, the tool that they use on an Android device to drive these pieces of equipment. So we're able to very quickly switch over to, you've mastered the piece of equipment, now let's master operation. And again, this is the job these guys are doing. Very risky job, very hazardous job. You cannot make mistakes in this job and say, well, we'll do better next day. This is really mission critical content that we're training folks for. And so the real challenge that they had was very similar. It was expensive, it was logistically complex, it was potentially dangerous. How do you train somebody to use a sensor to detect sarin gas unless I put sarin gas in the room? And I don't think anybody really wants to have me put sarin gas in the room. So in addition to be able to train people on the actual equipment, we were able to put virtual hazards in the room and allow them to do really complicated training scenarios where they're learning how to use complicated pieces of equipment with complicated hazards that they need to understand how the sensors work, but they don't have to be there with the equipment that is very hard to get, very expensive, and they don't have to put hazards around the room. And so the application that we developed for the DoD contains dozens of different devices. One headset, they can easily switch to whatever device they have to go out to use. And here's a quick video actually that shows you a little bit of it. It is also a networked multi-user application, as are most of our applications. So I put on a headset here in Texas, you put on a headset on the East Coast. We are suddenly in the same environment. I can see your device, you can see my device. We can talk to each other over voice over IP. It's as if we're in the same room with these devices, with these contaminants, yet we're on opposite ends of the planet. Very effective application for the DoD. A lot of these guys, they get 6 hours notice before they're being deployed, and they have to suddenly grab a device and learn how it works while they're on a plane, going to the drop site. So this allows them really to get comprehensive information, as well as pull in a live trainer if there's stuff they don't understand. And so really the key insight we gained here was that enhanced realism was necessary. The devices had to function just like the real devices. The onboard software had to function just like the onboard software did. And we were really able to, via our performance analysis module, track what the users are doing. So our framework includes a performance analysis module that is tracking every single action a user takes. If we've got an eye tracking device, were they looking at the right spot when the prompt came up? Were they paying attention? Were they clicking on the right things? We're really trying to track that information, and then we can upload that to any SCORM compliant LMS so that trainers can now be evaluating both virtual performance as well as real world performance. Here is another image of just the multi-user aspect where users are able to collaboratively work together even though they are not in the same room. I think I will keep moving on in the interest of time. And so really the insight we gained here again was that networked multi-user collaboration added everything to this project. The single user aspect of it was great. You could put it on, you could train, but as soon as we added multi-user, suddenly you had a trainer getting people all around the world into one session and doing training of people who are on 6 different continents without anybody having to get on a plane. It's also very scalable architecture. We can easily add new devices, new lessons. The application updates itself just like any app on your phone does. And so we are constantly producing new content, uploading it to our cloud server, and the users just get more content. And of course, reduced downtime. So no one is actually using the real world equipment. Those real world pieces of equipment are out in the field doing their job while people are training on virtual pieces of equipment. And overall, what we're really just trying to do for this client is raise situational awareness. That is what the military is interested in technology. They want to raise situational awareness so that operators have the best chance of success. The next customer I'd like to talk about is Somero Enterprises. Totally different industry. These folks make these large pieces of concrete equipment that are meant for placing and leveling concrete. They call their operators pilots. It is a very complicated piece of equipment to work with. Not only the machine, but you're laying down concrete, virtual, real world materials that are quickly curing. And so you have not only a complicated process, but you've got a time limit about how fast you have to do your job before the concrete starts to set up. So we built a training simulator for them that does the same thing as our other simulators. It allows you to have a virtual version of the piece of equipment, but also allows you to have virtual materials. This application is being distributed across 90 different countries. And so again, this was built as a MetaQuest application, but they don't support Brazil and Mexico, so we also have to have a Pico version of this application. And here you're seeing just a user using the application, so completely standalone headset, all hand tracking, so the user never has to fumble with controllers. We try to always leverage hand tracking. It's much more natural to interact with virtual objects the way you do in the real world. And so here this user can go through and do all the different maintenance techniques, all the different repair procedures, learning them without having to have a machine, without putting himself at risk, and without taking the machine out of production. And here's the viewpoint from his eyes. So we take advantage of AI in order to do voiceover narration, as well as some branching. So based on what you do in the simulator, the AI will possibly lead you down a different road based on different mistakes you're making or different operations you're trying to achieve. And so the real lesson that we learned here was that they were able to reduce real-world training time by 20 to 40%. Which to them was phenomenal. That was exactly what they were looking to do, to reduce that real-world training time. And then the customers who were taking advantage of the simulator reported that they were using 20 to 30% less fuel. So their customers who purchased the simulators from them were suddenly getting a financial return on investment as well. And we've added AI subject matter experts to a lot of our simulators, which is a really phenomenal addition and a very low lift. So we were able to train a large language model on just the operator's manual for this one piece of equipment. So with one click, with 0.3 seconds, I can ask it any question. How much concrete can this lay down on a 90-degree day on a 17-angle slope, or whatever my question is, and I can get that answer without having to call up a trainer, flip through a manual, or anything like that. It just allows us to very quickly ask questions about the application that we're working on. Samara was so impressed with that we are now working on a version of that with a pair of wearables that would allow you to ask those same questions about the real-world machine. So we're seeing a nice crossover from our simulation training into real-world training. And really, the insight that we gained from them was that, again, this is a network multi-user application, so folks could train anywhere, anytime. We could scale. We're always adding new pieces of equipment, new modules. We build level editors, much like video games include level editors. We like to include level editors when possible with our simulators so that they can build their own scenarios. For JLG, actually, we have a level editor where the community is constantly building scenarios, and it just adds to the library of scenarios that are available, and JLG's not having to pay for it. It's community-generated content. It's a very effective way of building content without incurring the cost. I think I will skip on here since we've got about 5 minutes left. This simulator was just rolled out at the Concrete Institute. Samara has a Concrete Institute down in Fort Myers, Florida. It is being evaluated right now, but the first piece of information we got from them was that for the first time ever, users can go through the virtual training and then hop right on a real-world piece of equipment and operate it. That is something that they have never been able to do, and this was actually beyond what they were hoping for in this first version. So we're really happy to really be affecting their operations. And the simulator, again, is a Quest simulator. No real-world controls yet, just running off the controllers, basically. So it really allows you to train anywhere, anytime. So no one has the opportunity, well, it's raining outside, I'm just going to sit around inside. Hop on the simulator. It's always available. I've got 3 minutes left, so I think I'm going to fly through the next one kind of quickly if I can. So we work for General Electric Healthcare. They develop MRI machines, CT scanners, X-ray vascular machines. Again, here's the job that these folks are doing. Second only, second only to the International Space Station, we've heard that these are some of the most complicated pieces of equipment to repair. So they have a training center in Waukesha, Wisconsin. They bring people in every 2 years to get trained on the latest pieces of equipment, but they were just having trouble having that training stick. People were walking out and forgetting what they had learned. And so we supplemented their existing training simulator by building, their existing training facility by building both a desktop and XR-based training simulator. The lesson that we learned here is that, the desktop simulator was originally built, here you're seeing a version of it, so that a user could pop open their laptop the night before they're going to go into a hospital, do that repair 5 times virtually, make the mistakes there, and then go into the real world and do it correctly. We also developed an augmented reality version of this application that you're seeing here. I think this video has to get played somehow. Maybe the back can help me out with that. Or maybe we'll just look at the static graphic. But basically what we did was we developed an augmented reality version, thank you folks, that allows you to basically, as you're doing the operation, have a virtual twin, a digital replica of it, in your peripheral vision that has all the steps you're going to be doing. So as I'm working on the real world equipment, I can just make sure I'm following along with what I did on the laptop the night before. Very effective way to deliver training as well as reuse that training for operations. And so really the lessons that we learned here was just the cost efficiency and the logistics. Flying people into Waukesha, Wisconsin every 2 years, putting them up, going through this training, it was so cost prohibitive that our simulator allows them now to just send software. You can just send a link to somebody and it's just way easier. I've got about a minute left, so I am going to skip ahead. Apologize if I am jumping through some of this too fast. But really, overall, these are some of the ROI formula that we call it that we've learned. We're getting 40 to 70% faster skill acquisition. Again, that is exceeding what some of our customers were hoping for. They were thinking 10, 15, 20%. When we are getting 50% faster retention, it is really something that they notice. And then the reduction of travel costs by 20 to 25%, like I mentioned. Waukesha, Wisconsin, not the easiest place to get to if you're in India or anywhere around the world where they have to come to. So we're really able to save money on travel. And then we're also able to accelerate the go-to-market phase. So we work for a number of companies where we are developing virtual prototypes. We did this for General Electric, where they're able to prototype virtually, see if this machine works, maybe move a button around, move a belt around, a fan, whatever it is, really allows them to prototype fast and then get to market quicker. And then with about 20 seconds left, I think I will just conclude that say failure is good. At our company, we always talk about we want to fail. We like to build training simulators that challenge users, provoke them to make mistakes, right? The best learning experience is when you make a mistake. So we really want you to fail in our simulators to reveal the consequences so you have that deja vu moment and then don't do it in the real world. And so here is just an example from one of the JLG simulators about how we do that. So the user is able to have these visceral experiences. We take advantage of XR and all the gaming aspects to really give this visceral experience to show you what happens, to show you this is what failure looks like. Fail here, not in the real world. And I'm afraid I've used all my time, so I won't take questions and answers right now unless the back gives me a nod. I will stay at the back of the room if you have any questions, and we've got a booth downstairs in the Expo Hall, booth 614. We'd love to answer any questions you've got. So thank you very much.